Mr. President, my ladies, distinguished members of the Constitutional Council, I wish to crave your indulgence to exercise my fundamental rights as provided in Article 1.3 of the Cameroonian Constitution, that English and French are the official languages of Cameroon. In this regard, I would speak in the English language. We've had a lot of speakers here, but dominated by the French language. And I think that being a bilingual country, understanding the fact that there are peoples of the Southwest and the Northwest region who are following this historic event, it would be necessary also for them to have the opportunity to be able to understand what is going on. My permission being granted, Mr. President, I assume, I wish to start by saying that on the 17th of January 2017, myself, Barrister Nkongho Felix AGBOR, living in the historic city of Boya, and Dr. Fontem Niba, the Secretary General of the Cameroun Anglophone Civil Society Consortium, were arrested, chained, and brought to Yaoundé. We were tried in a military tribunal on 8 counts of secession, terrorism, incitement of civil war, group rebellion, attempting to change the form of a state, spreading false information over the internet, amongst others. One of our lawyers was called Professor Maurice Kamto. He defended us in those trying and difficult moments where our lives, liberty were at stake, where we were facing the death penalty, for trying to improve the lives of the people of this country, for fighting for the rights of the people of the English-speaking Cameroon, and to show that this country is one and all of us would respect it. But I'm not here today because Professor Maurice Kamto was my lawyer. I'm not a politician. I don't belong to the MRC. But I'm here because Professor Kamto incarnates the values of justice, of unity, of peace that we need in this country. I'm here because the unity of this country is at stake. This court has a duty to ensure that we live here, that justice, the perception that an election can be won through the ballot box should be respected. Otherwise, we would have given credence to those who believe that no change can come through the ballot box in Cameroon. It's in this regard that I look at Article 48 of the law that created the Constitutional Council. And it says, the Constitutional Council shall ensure the regularity of presidential, parliamentary elections, and a referendum. They shall ensure. The draftsmen use the shall, which in law is mandatory. If they felt that it was not very important, they would have said the Constitutional Council may ensure. And how do you ensure the regularity of an election when the electoral code is not respected? How do you ensure the regularity of an election when Article 54 sub 1 is not respected? We have glaring evidence that in numerous places in Cameroon, in the far north, in Adamawa, in the southwest, in the northwest, in the east, that the representatives of the MRC were expelled from the polling booths. They were expelled from the polling centers. We are not saying that these are cases where they did not have representatives. We're saying that these representatives were duly constituted following the laws of this country, following the laws of ELECAM. But because the administration is always high-handed, because the administration believes that the laws were created to suit a particular individual and a particular candidate, they would always show disrespect and disdain to the majority of the people of this country. I'll give you the example of Far North, where in Mvele, the representative of the MRC was sent out of the polling station. We have a procès verbal. It's not very easy. We all know I know the other parties would argue that we will not have sufficient proof. We know how our country operates. Cameroon does not operate in a vacuum. We know the law of this country is the law of force. And Mr. President, the force of your experience would say you understand this country better than me. You would understand that where the administration have an interest, we cannot have all the procès-verbal stating in cases where our client, representatives of our clients were sent out of the polling station. But we're fortunately to have the procès-verbal of Vele, which I would want to tender as evidence.
Continue.
In Binka and Bot, in Kambe subdivision of the Dunga Mantung found in the Northwest regions, we have instances wherein the duly constituted representative of the MRC, they were sent out of the polling station. I don't know, I think the French word chasser, it's a better word to use. They were expelled. Ils ont chassé. For what is the reason? Because they felt that the interests of a particular candidate must be protected. Not the interests of the Constitution. Not the interests of the Electoral Code. Not the interests of Cameroon. We need to protect the interests of Cameroon. No individual in this country, and I repeat, no individual is bigger than this country. Cameroon would outlive whoever is the president today or tomorrow. But we need to fight for the people. And it is this august body that when your institution came into being, there was celebration across the board in this country. People were happy. Finally, the Constitutional Council has seen the light of day. The expectation of the Constitutional Council is high. Times have changed in this country. Mr. President, the task of the Constitutional Council is similar to the task of the Supreme Court judges in the United States of America in the famous case of Roe versus Wade. This was a case where they challenged the constitutionality on the rights of abortion and the restriction. But the Supreme Court judges stood their grounds. They looked at the law. They looked at the interests of justice and they ruled in favor of the people. Your task, your challenges, is as equally as high as the law that ended slavery and the slave trade. And also the law that ended apartheid and released the famous Madiba. Today, we would argue that they have used the law, they have used the courts to institutionalize and legitimize bad laws. They have used the courts to perpetuate a particular individual in power. And history has a funny way of judging us. If you remember during Nazi Germany and during the period of colonialism, in international law experts, they said Africa was terra nullus, meaning that Africa was not owned by anybody. At that time, they used the courts. They used the judges to justify. But today, all of us realize that that was fundamentally wrong. The Nazis used the court to justify genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes against the Jews when they eliminated 6 million and above. They used the judges, and it was accepted. But a couple of years after, some of those judges had to repent and apologize for what they did. We expect these honorable judges, this institution that we hold in high esteem, that's why we're here today. These venerated institutions, I look at the faces of the members of this committee. I have hope for the country. I see my former Procurator General of the Southwest, who I know is a man of timber and caliber. I see the president, who I've read about. I see Madame Flores Arre also, who I know. And I see Professor Nkwi and all the other members. And we expect that this court, this institution, should give justice to the people. Mr. President, outside the case of Boya, when I'm not working as a lawyer, I run a human rights organization, Center for Human Rights and Democracy. I monitored the elections in 9 polling stations. The situation was tense. Even the governor of the Southwest had to vote had parliamentarian flag under military escorts, but some of us had to walk freely to ensure that the elections were monitored. I'll give you the example of the polling station at the Old Boya Council. The Old Boya Council is situated towards Mukunda, where one of your colleagues of blessed memory, Chief Endeli, used to be the paramount chief. The representative of the MRSA was there in the morning. He had all the documents, 2 of them, but they refused them not to get into the hall. They argued that their name was not on the list of Elekam. They had to call the police commissioner of Central Police to come and do an investigation. When he came there, he asked why the MRSA officers were not there. They said their name not on Elekam. They had to go to Elekam. Mr. President, walking from the old council to Elekam in a date where there was general boycott in the southwest and the northwest, in a day where the DO of Boya was shot and wounded in Munya, in a day where people's lives could not be guaranteed, took more than an hour. And when they went to Elekam, they realized that the representatives' names were on the list. By the time they got back to the polling station, it was 3 p.m. Imagine what would happen between when the polls were open and 3 p.m. I know they would argue that we don't have enough evidence. Yes, we might not have. But how could we have? In a country where when you are not with this government, nobody pays attention to you. In a country where it will be difficult for someone to sign that the polling officers were chased. We don't live in a vacuum. We know our country. And Mr. President, I would say again, the force of your experience shows that you understand Cameroon better than a young man and myself. This is a country where ministers have been removed and taken to jail. What of a small polling officer? How can he stand against administration? We argue, yes, sir, that because of all these irregularities, we believe that for justice to be done, because there is a perception justice should not only be done, but should be seen to be done. As we speak here, at least 15 million Cameroonians are watching us. The days of old, where you would take a decision without giving an account to history to the people, has gone. The court of public opinion is watching. The people are watching. Cameroonians won't change, they are watching. We expect this honorable house to rise above sentiments. We expect this house to be independent. I know you guys, the judges, are made up of timber and caliber. I hope that the independence of the judiciary would be manifested in your decision. Because when the voices of the people are not heard, it leads to chaos. Mr. President, I have seen, I've lived, I've witnessed cases where the voices of the people have not been heard. And it has led us to where we are today. October 2016, Anglophone lawyers protested for a better legal system. They were not heard. The teachers joined, they were not heard. Today we have chaos in the southwest and the northwest. I mean, some of the so-called ministers sitting here cannot go to the southwest and the northwest. Some of them cannot go to their villages because they did not listen to the people. The voice of the people, they say, is the voice of God. Let us listen to the voice of the people. Let us listen to the voice of Cameroonians who are yearning for change. Cameroonians who want this country to change. And it is in the hands of this Constitutional Council to address this issue. Mr. President, based on the fact that the representatives of the polling station of the MRSA in a couple of places that we've manifested were not allowed to be in the polling station, we urge this honorable house to cancel partially those areas that the representatives were not there, because this would just respect Article 54 sub 1. I know they would argue about Article 56 and 57. We are not talking about situations where they were irregular. We are talking about situations where they were regular, where they had a right to be there, but they were not there. Because if we don't respect these our laws, then we are in a situation where the Constitutional Council will not be ensuring that elections are regular. I looked at the dictionary, the meaning of regular, and it said normal, and it said just, and it said well organized. Would you say the elections were well organized in a case where, or in cases where the representatives of a political party was expelled from the polling station? Would you say the elections were regular, were conducted, respected the basic and fundamental rights of candidate Kamto in a situation where his or polling officers were expelled? The answer, Mr. President, would definitely be in the negative. And if the answer is in the negative, I urge you, Mr. President, and the honorable members of this panel, that in your quiet moment, when you are writing the decision, think about the people of this country. Think about the unity of this country. I come from a region where it has been devastated. I urge you, I pray, I plead, I beg, I call upon you to take a decision that would not mar the unity of this country. Take a decision that would help in bringing Cameroonians together. And that decision would be that in places where Article 54 sub 1 was not respected, you annul, you cancel the elections. I would conclude, Mr. President, by saying that your probity, your independence, your integrity, your place in the history of this country is at stake. We need to leave a legacy for posterity. We need our children, our children's children, to remember that we had avant-gardist judges at the court of the Constitutional Council, honorable members who looked beyond party or individual inclination. That is why justice is blind. The scale is always blind, because it's no respecter of person. The law should be equal. Each and every one should be equal in front of the law. Let us not get carried by the fact that a particular candidate appointed us to this august institution. No? Let us look at Cameroon, because Cameroon is bigger than everybody. Cameroon is bigger than President Kamto. Cameroon is bigger than President Paul Biya. It's bigger than each and every member of the panel. Everybody here, we would go, but this country would remain. And if we love the country the way we claim we do, let us take a decision that posterity will judge us right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Merci.
Monsieur le Président, juste pour compléter ce que Maître Nkongho vient de dire, nous avons sous la main ici la liste